Now that his mentor/father figure Tony Stark is gone, it's time for Peter Parker to grow up in a big way in Spider-Man Far From Home. When you're a superhero, that means getting your very own big boy nemesis. The trailers certainly seem to be setting that up through Quentin Beck, better known as Mysterio. He's always got a trick or 12 up his sleeve, but could this be a classic case of Marvel movie misdirection? Let's find out. Everyone knows that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Nick Fury is one of the good guys, or at the very least, he's a guy with good intentions, namely keeping the world safe. We last saw him standing somberly at Tony Stark's funeral in Avengers Endgame, but now it seems like he's back to work in Spider-Man Far From Home. In the trailer for the movie, we were all shocked to see special effects expert Quentin Beck introduced as a hero. You see, in the comic books, Quentin generally goes by the name Mysterio, and he's definitely a bad guy. Not only is he an outright villain, but he has it in for Spider-Man in particular. He has a major beef with our favorite web-slinger, and his incapacitate Spider-Man budget is seemingly endless. So when he showed up ready to save the day in the trailer, we were immediately suspicious. Clearly, this was some kind of con to take out Spider-Man, or for some other kind of personal gain. The only other possibility seemed to be that Quentin would be starting out as a good guy and eventually go rogue at some point in the movie. But what if there was another option? After all, in a cinematic universe where Skrulls are the good guys, we can't be too careful. In the lead up to Captain Marvel, we were also guilty of eyeing all of our favorite characters with the utmost suspicion. Hey, you never know who could secretly be a Skrull. But we were surprised to learn the Skrulls aren't necessarily bad, and most of us relaxed a little bit. In the words of Alistair Moody, we here at CBR practice constant vigilance. We know that quote's from another fantasy franchise, but it still applies. What if the villain isn't Mysterio at all, but it's someone we never suspected? Could Marvel be pulling the old switcheroo on us? Maybe we should take a closer look at our old friend Nick Fury. Did anything about Nick Fury's behavior in the trailer strike you as particularly heroic? We know he can be abrasive and stubborn, but hey, that's part of what we love about him. Yet his actions in the trailer could be construed as being way over the line. Yeah, we appreciate his interest in superheroes, but in the trailer, we see him essentially stalking a teenage boy, waiting for him in his room and tranquilizing his friend. Yeah, we know sometimes the ends justify the means, but that's a bit heavy-handed. It really seems like Fury is trying his best to isolate Peter Parker for some reason. He mentions Thor and Captain Marvel aren't anywhere on Earth, but there are still plenty of heroes to choose from. There's the new Captain America, Bucky Barnes, War Machine, Ant-Man and the Wasp, just to name a few. Why go through all the trouble of stalking a high schooler who's only been a hero for a hot minute? It does seem pretty suspicious that all the other heroes are mysteriously too busy to show up and bash some elemental monsters. Could the fact that he's trying to do this all on the down low be a huge clue? After all, when we see Fury introducing Peter to Quentin, he looks to be doing so in a sewer. It's pretty clear Fury's trying to be incognito here, but why? We know the timeline got a little bit confusing since we last saw Nick Fury in the movie Captain Marvel, which took place in the 90s. We saw him in the mid-credits scene in Avengers Infinity War for a brief moment, but that was it. We have no idea what he's been up to in the MCU all this time. Don't worry, we're not suggesting that the Nick Fury we all know and love has gone evil. We're suggesting something much, much crazier. In Avengers Endgame, we saw that our heroes messed with the time-space continuum, which, as we all know, always turns out well. In Far From Home, Peter is excited to learn that his world is part of a multiverse, and honestly, we're right there with him. While we love the crazy, wild, weird wackiness that the multiverse can bring, it also brings characters who don't have our heroes' best intentions at heart. In the MCU, there's only one Nick Fury, but in the comic books, there are many different ones. At times, Fury has been an actual hero, a kind of anti-hero, and an outright villain depending on the situation and universe he's in. If Quentin Beck could get here from another universe, why couldn't another version of Nick Fury? It would certainly explain why he's trying to keep things quiet for now. He wouldn't want to attract the attention of other superheroes, or the other Nick Fury for that matter. Now, let's talk about the Nick Fury from Earth 1298, the Mutant X universe. We all know about the X-Men, and one of the frequent issues they encounter is that many non-mutants aren't their biggest fans. They fear the powers they wield, and this puts mutants in a tough spot. When they fight against humans, they confirm all of their greatest fears about them, but not defending themselves often doesn't end particularly well either. It's a tough conundrum with no real good answers, and that's what makes it so compelling. Thanks to Disney acquiring Fox, they now have the rights to characters including the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. And it's only a matter of time before they're integrated into the MCU. Okay, so we all know it'll probably only happen years from now, but it's still happening. That means Marvel is probably looking to set the groundwork for the X-Men to be unveiled, and setting up a precedent of people fearing those with superpowers would be a great start. On Earth 1298, Nick Fury is the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it's not the organization we encountered in the MCU. This S.H.I.E.L.D. stands for the Saviors of Humanity by Intervention in the Evolution of Life-Form Deviants. Yeah, it's kind of a lofty title that doesn't really roll off the tongue. Anyway, this Fury wants to keep humans safe, but his definition of humans and safe are pretty suspect. S.H.I.E.L.D. makes it their mission to eliminate superpowered people so that all of the normal humans can live in peace. You know, because nobody without superpowers has ever turned to a life of crime or villainy. If this Fury found himself on Earth 199999, which is the MCU by the way, either by accident or on purpose, it wouldn't be a good thing for heroes like Spider-Man. This could be a shocking source of conflict and a way to lay the groundwork for the X-Men to enter the MCU. That would be a huge win for Marvel Studios if it turns out to be true. And then there's the ultimate Spider-Man version of Nick Fury, who's also not a friend to our dear sweet Peter Parker. Seriously, who would ever want to destroy that face? This Fury figures out who Spider-Man really is and immediately tries to get him under his control. And let's not forget that this version of Nick Fury is actually modeled after Samuel L. Jackson, who portrays him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This might make it even easier for this storyline to get translated to the big screen. Nick Fury manages to track down Peter Parker and informs him that the moment he turns 18 years old, he's going to become property of S.H.I.E.L.D. Why does Fury do this? Because of Peter's superpowers, of course. Fury wants Spider-Man to fight for him and become a part of the Ultimates, but their relationship isn't exactly smooth sailing. Eventually, the two manage to reach an uneasy peace between each other, but things are pretty darn messy for quite some time. Considering how hard Fury's trying to get a hold of Peter in the Far From Home trailers and how aggressive his pursuit is, we wouldn't be surprised if this is a new Fury we're not used to seeing. What could inspire any version of Nick Fury or even our own main timeline version to act this way? Well, it's simple. Fear. Remember, being brave doesn't mean never experiencing fear. It means standing strong in spite of it. In the history of the MCU, we've seen many of our heroes use fear as their motivation. Tony Stark set off the events of Avengers Age of Ultron because he was so terrified by what he experienced in the Battle of New York. This was also a big part of the movie Iron Man 3 as we watched him deal with the trauma of that event. Aliens falling out of the sky and attacking everyone in sight is really scary, even if you're a superhero. And let's not forget that Peter experienced something incredibly similar in Avengers Endgame. It was scary enough for him to engage the instant kill mode on his Spider-Man suit. This is also something we've seen motivate Fury before. In the beginning of Captain Marvel, we met a young, fresh-faced, two-eyed Nick Fury who didn't think there was any such thing as aliens in the MCU. He learned that lesson the hard way and realized there are some threats too big for mere mortals to deal with. This inspired him to create the Avengers Initiative, which he named in honor of Carol Danvers. Sure, it was named after Carol, but it was really motivated by Fury's fears of what could happen if Earth is invaded. After being decimated by an ultra-powerful alien and spending the past 5 years out of commission, we have a feeling Fury isn't feeling the safest right about now. Not that we blame him. And we can't imagine being aware of the multiverse makes him rest any easier at night. What would happen if Fury decides the next big threat might not come from outer space, but is already here on Earth? If Fury wanted to take out Peter Parker, getting him alone would be a brilliant first step. After all, the other heroes might be too busy, but we're assuming they'd come running if one of their own was taken out. Any version of Fury knows the power of secrecy and working in the shadows, especially when dealing with superheroes. In Captain America Civil War, mere mortal Helmut Zemo managed to tear apart the Avengers without confronting them head-on. It's a smart strategy, and even if Fury is evil, he's still a smart guy. Making Peter losing his life look like an accident would be the best way to dispose of him without it being traced back to Fury. What better way to do that than by setting Peter on a task and sabotaging him? It could be that Mysterio is in on the whole thing, or he's just an unwitting pawn in Fury's game. After all, in the comic books, Quentin Beck doesn't have an actual superpower. He just uses the crazy gadgets he comes up with. If Fury considered superpowered humans a threat, he wouldn't have an incentive to take out Mysterio. If Quentin Beck is really just a good guy from another universe, what would become of him when he realizes he was complicit in taking out Peter Parker? Sometimes, the line between hero and villain can be a bit blurry, and this is something we'd definitely love to see explored more in the MCU. So, what do you think of the idea that it's Nick Fury and not Quentin Beck who's the true villain of Spider-Man Far From Home? Take a moment to share your thoughts with us in the comments section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Bye for now.